So if you ever had your go-to mount point your telescope to the ground or do some crazy slewing that's unexplained and just can't seem to fix it, well, I'm going to show you a common cause and how to fix it. So last night, my ASIR shut off the telescope after my first imaging session, so I came out here at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and it was in a position something like this. So I flipped the ASR back on, and I reset the clutches and pointed it back to north, like this. Tighten the clutches down. Hard to do this when I'm holding the phone. Turn the ASIR back on and then try to go to my next target, and the telescope went insane. And so started pointing in random directions here and there, and I've had this before, and sometimes I'll even point down and go to the target, can't find it, then do massive slewing and on and on and on. So I want to show you why your telescope might lose its mind and what happened. So last night when the ASR shut off automatically because it was the end of the imaging session, when I came out here, this switch was on and powered. All right, and that's the first key to how this telescope got confused. Then when I turned the ASIR on, what happens is the telescope was never cycled off, and so it was synced to the last target. So when I moved the clutches and put it back north, well, that completely messed it up because it was pointing like, over here or something, because it was done with its session, and it didn't know where it was. All right, let's talk for a minute about the startup sequence with your telescope and the ASIR. When you first power everything on, your telescope should be in the home position. And now you're ready to slew to a target. The ASIR will send a GOTO command to the mount, and the mount will attempt to find it. But basically the mount is in what we call blind mode because it hasn't really been properly oriented. So the scope slews and takes an image, and the ASI plate solves that image and sends the corrections to the scope. Now the scope makes minor corrections and it slews again, and hopefully it can find it the next time, but you might have to do even one more time if you're in blind mode because of this issue that I'm going to talk about. So at this point we are not in sync with the ASIR, and basically the mount does not have the finely tuned calibration of where it actually is, even though you have slewed to the target and plate solved and you're centered on your target right now. If you were to slew again right now without doing anything that I'm going to discuss, then the ASIR would send a GOTO command to the mount, and it would go through the same thing again, but it would be pretty poor because it's in blind mode. And so the solution here is to sync the mount, and syncing stores the correct location into memory into the board of the mount itself, and it's basically in RAM, and then it makes fine-tuned corrections of where it actually is. Now here's the issue: if you move the clutches after it has synced, you will completely mess it up. And that's what happened to me. And the issue here is when the ASIR is shut off, it has no effect on the scope because the scope was still turned on with an independent power supply, and it had stored that syncing data into memory. And so this is the part that I forgot last night and what caused the major issue. So here's the solution. You have a couple of choices. You need to shut off the mount itself, let it power down, and turn it back on. Set all your clutches to home position, slew to a target, plate solve, and sync again. And that way you can store the correct location into the mount. All right, I'm going to head back out in the field and show you how to do this firsthand with the ASIR. All right, so let's slew to a target. Okay, that was a 4-minute error. All right, so now we are confirmed on this target, and so what I'm going to do, this preview is probably not going to be enough stars, so I'm going to set this for a 10-second in bin 4 so that I can do a very quick one, and we'll go ahead and take a little image here. Now bin 4 will be much brighter and it'll be a much smaller size file. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is go on the left hand side and press the solve button. And here is where you can sync the mount to the current target, and also it'll store those corrections in there. So I'm going to press in the lower right sync mount. Alright, now let's go back home. Now I want to go in, I'm going to do that same target, but I want to pay close attention to the error. Okay, it should be 34 minutes. Let's see what it does. Right on the money. It didn't even have to correct. And that's the difference right there, because the first one was blind and the second one was not. And so we had a 4-minute error to begin with, and now we do not. And that's the power of syncing your scope to the ASIAir. So this is the home position right here. And when you set this up, there are minor imperfections when you run the clutches. So maybe it's just a little bit to the right or to the left, or maybe your right ascension is not quite vertical up and down, and the syncing takes care of all of that. And you can see the power now of what syncing can do, and it makes everything right, and so you have very few errors. So now how does that help us? I've showed you how to sync the mount to its current location, and also in with the ASIAir as we have it set up here. Now what happens if you do like I did and you accidentally power off your ASIAir? Well, now the GOTO mount, which is stored in this box down here, it thinks it's pointing here, and if you were to run the clutches like I did before and you put it somewhere else, you have completely messed it up and confused it. And so your solution is very simple. So let's say that it has lost its mind. So what do? Well, I would power off the ASIAir, and I would power off the switch down here, and then turn this switch on and turn the ASIAir on, and make sure that you're pointed north. I can't show it because I'm holding the camera and the light, but you loosen your clutches and you put them on north, which is in this direction. And then when you do that, the ASIAir will think it's in home position. The GOTO mount, based on this little box, will think it's in home position as well, and then you can do the procedure that I showed you just a few minutes ago, and it'll fix it right then and there.